We live. We set. We're on hot mics.
We're doing it live.
We're hot mics.
Hot mics. Hot mics. It's going to be a hot day today, and we are hanging out at a place that I am really excited about today, Brian. Normally you do the intros. Today it's going to be me because I actually set this little get-together up for once. And we're hanging out with a guy that I've gotten to know a little bit over the last several months, starting at a mutual friend's place, our buddy Evan Pittman. And learning about Kenny May's story was fascinating because he is a guy who has lived many lives. He is a military veteran, having served as a Navy photographer for several years. He worked in corporate America after that, selling cybersecurity to the government.
As one does.
And other firms that needed cybersecurity. And eventually he grew tired of the corporate lifestyle and decided to pursue something that he started doing kind of out of a total accident of him and his wife buying land in Lockhart, moving from Pflugerville. It had an ag exemption. Tell me if I'm correct about this. It had an ag exemption because it was beekeeper friendly, and so you started to learn the ropes a little bit, and then you found a passion in bees, Kenny, and several years later that has turned into what is now officially known as the Lockhart Honey Company, located in Lockhart. And it's not just about selling honey per se. You guys do a lot of different things. Am I getting the gist of the genesis of all of this correct?
Yeah, definitely. We bought a property that had an ag exemption for bees, and so the previous owner didn't have bees when we got there, so we had to figure out doing the bees ourselves. So that was the biggest thing. I tried to find someone to put bees on my property, and the prices I was quoted was more than my tax savings were. So I said, well, how hard is it to become a beekeeper? And then just got into it.
And how hard is it to become a beekeeper?
It's not easy, but if you want to learn, it's easy. So I hired a guy to come out and teach me every month from New Braunfels, and then the more that I learned, the more that I wanted to learn, and I was like, oh, this bug is pretty cool. And so I didn't really care about the bees or the honey at that point. I just cared about the tax savings, and that was all that was ever going to be. And then here we are, 5 years later, and it's turned into my full-time job.
Well, yeah, and you said so this location here on Colorado in Lockhart is relatively new. You opened in November.
Yeah.
This past year, and really to have a processing facility and space to grow, the ag teaching and those types of things, and then people kept walking in asking for honey.
Yeah. So we started leasing the building in February of last year, and so all we were going to do here was just store equipment work out of, have it as a staging point when we go in and out of bee yards, and then we put the signs up on the road, and then people started stopping by, and then it was like, well, I guess we're going to open up a storefront, but we needed to wait till it slowed down enough to be able to do that. In the wintertime, we don't get into the bees too much, and so I figured the first weekend in November for the barbecue festival was the best first opportunity to do it. So that's when we opened, and we've been open ever since.
So you said a bee expert from New Braunfels kind of helped to show you the ropes when you were just learning. At what point did you feel comfortable enough to handle everything on your own?
Probably about 6 months into it.
Okay.
But I went down a rabbit hole reading everything I could and trying to learn as much as I could. So I just really got into it, and I started volunteering to help people with bee removals that do it as a business, and because I was like, oh, this is really, really intriguing, and cutting open a wall, or getting bees to come out of the tree without cutting the tree open, different things like that. And then it was way more interesting than my job was at the time.
Was there something that was either most interesting or most surprising to learn about in that first 6 months?
There's a lot. So bee forage is 2 to 5 miles away. So if you have a bee yard that's 20 foot by 20 foot circle, and there's 50 hives there, it intrigued me that the bees can know which box is their home to fly back to after flying miles away. And then a honeybee only lives 4 to 6 weeks, so that was something else that was pretty surprising. And so a queen bee can lay 2,000 eggs a day, and so those eggs become bees 21 days later.
Bees live 4 to 6 weeks. Does the queen also live that amount of time?
No, she can live several years. So it's and then once she starts,
that's why she's the queen.
Yeah. Once she starts to get to not being as fertile, they'll take her out and make a new queen. So there's just
they'll kill her.
Oh yeah,
don't get any ideas, people. That's not the way it works with humans. With bees, maybe, but not here.
So are honeybees? Because I've heard this generally speaking with bees, that if a bee stings you, that's it. It's just gone kamikaze bee. Is that the case with honeybees?
Yeah, when they sting you, they die. It just depends on the temperament. There's a bunch of different breeds of honeybees. So one bee stinging you, not a big deal. But if it's a more aggressive hive, then it sets off a swarm of bees just coming after you.
I've also heard that when male bees go through the procreation process, once that happens, their man bee parts explode and then they die also. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Their job is
that
to
was happening to us, Brian.
Maybe it
breed.
should.
Probably.
Looking at you, U.S. Hockey.
Yeah, they eat and breed, and that's their sole job. Sounds like not a bad life.
That's right. Well, and I think it's interesting. We were talking about this earlier, and I'm coming from the restaurant space when I think about these things. But I fell in love with wine, and then I fell in love with coffee, and it's the same core kind of concept, right? What you're consuming comes from a place. It has a sense of terroir, right? Whether it be where they're pollinating, where they're feeding, what they're living on, and then ultimately you've got to take that product and care for it downstream, right? You got to take it out, you got to process it, not process it, right, and get it to the consumer. And I think that, I don't know, the thing that I got really excited about in the wine world was just that, is understanding the people that grew the grapes, and the conditions that the vintage and why that vintage tasted a certain way. You were showing us some of these, you've got a bunch of different honeys from around Texas and the country. Talk to us a little bit about, talk to us a little bit about those honeys. Which ones do you have now that are exciting you? Which ones, you were telling me something, is it the Tupelo honey that you have in that's number one on your list right now?
Yes. So when I opened the store, I thought I can't just sell one thing, and I was really having a hard time figuring out what else am I going to sell besides bottles of honey. But I also didn't want to waste a bunch of money on things that would just sit there and that money wouldn't be put to good use. So I was like, well, let's bring in different honeys from other places in Texas to start and then kind of grow from there. So we brought in some South Texas Wahia honey, some East Texas wildflower honey, some West Texas cotton honey to start. And then we started, talking to other beekeepers, and now we have South Dakota clover honey, Tupelo honey from Florida Panhandle.
Which you say is the champagne of honey.
It is, yeah. It's known as the champagne of honey, and it's only produced in the southern Georgia, Florida Panhandle region, and so it's as far as monofloral honeys, meaning it comes from one nectar source. That's number one on the monofloral honey list for the United States, and that's why it's known as the champagne of honey. What
makes it so good, other than the fact that it's coming from that single source?
The flavor profile of it also is a very slow crystallizing honey, so it could take years to crystallize, where other honeys won't take years. It's also low on the glycemic index, so people with diabetes, it doesn't spike their blood sugar the same way as other honeys could, and so that's there's a lot of different reasons on why people like Tupelo.
That's awesome,
and
I just think that is so cool. Just how. That we discover it. B, where we have the system built to bring it to Lockhart, Texas.
Yeah, and my goal is to have honey that's not available at the store. So getting honey from other parts of the country that's just you don't see really unless you're in those parts of the country. So here in the next week, we're getting what's called sourwood honey, which is from the Appalachian Mountains. It's another really good tasting honey, and then we're also getting some alfalfa honey, which is very sweet tasting honey, and I was really surprised with that, because you think of alfalfa for your cows or horse feed or whatever, and you don't really think of it as honey, but it's actually a very, very sweet tasting honey.
So Kenny, considering your understanding of these different varietals, I mean, you've kind of become a bit of a honey sommelier, it sounds like.
Yeah, it seems like it's starting to go that direction.
Are you actually traveling places to try honeys so that you're getting them as fresh as possible in a region, or is it okay to have something sent to you and you still get a pretty good idea about it? It's
okay to have it sent. So like Cade and I went to Kentucky last month for the North American Honeybee Expo. So we networked with a lot of different beekeepers over there, and so the sourwood and the alfalfa honey is coming from a family out of North Carolina that we met with, and we actually tasted their honey and everything. So we know exactly where it's coming from, where a lot of honey at the store goes through about 5 layers before it gets into the bottle at the store. So this is going from beekeeper to bottle. And so that's kind of the way that I see this unfolding. And then one other honey I'm trying to source right now is fireweed honey from the Pacific Northwest that looks like water. It's clear, and it's known as the Champagne of the North.
Considering just how robust growth is in the Pacific Northwest, and I know this because I lived in Oregon for a little while, you pretty much name a fruit or vegetable and it grows there at some point in the year. I don't know if the quality of bee changes as a result of that, or bees are going to do their bee thing, and if they just happen to be in an area that has more robust growth, then I guess all the plant life is better for it.
I think so, and so with industrial agriculture, that's kind of a problem on bees sometimes too, with having one plant available and no other varieties. So that's one of the challenges, but that's why a lot of those ag producers will pay for pollination contracts. So they bring bees in temporarily to pollinate because the native bees or the local bees can't support that for the industrial agriculture.
Well, we've talked a lot about the different honeys that you have at the shop and a little bit about ag exemptions, but this is a multifaceted business that you are running here. So let's talk about some of these different things that you do. And I'm just going to go down the list. You manage hives for landowners looking to establish and maintain an ag exemption. What all does that entail? And what exactly does the ag exemption get these rural landowners?
Yeah, so it's a tax savings for their property taxes. So a lot of people buy these properties that were 500-acre cattle ranch, and it was subdivided out into a bunch of smaller parcels so they can switch it over to bees right away when they own it and not have to wait 5 years to establish it. So on properties that don't currently have an ag valuation, they basically, it takes 5 years to build up to that. But if it has an ag valuation and you purchase it, and you could switch it over to bees. And so a lot of people don't want to become a beekeeper or do any of that. So they pay us to put our bees on their property, and then they have a tax savings above what our cost is, above and beyond that. So that's really where it makes the most sense. And most people save, around $3,000 after paying us. But we have some property owners, like there's a property off the toll road, they save about $30,000 on their property taxes for having the bees there. So there's different, depending on the area that it's in and the market value of the land, it changes considerably.
And does the number of hives that you're putting on that land, does the amount of land make a difference in how many hives you're choosing to put there?
Yeah, well, it's really the county is telling us what the hive count needs to be per acre. So
and that changes by county then?
Yeah, by county and then per acre. So usually on 5 acres, the minimum amount of hives is 6 hives. Mm. And then like here in Caldwell County, for 20 acres, it's 15 hives.
Mm.
So, being I guess somebody that pays attention somewhat to the world, the headline grabbing stories, right? The clickbait stories are the death of the honeybee. Honeybees are gone. Honeybees are going away. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, how endangered is the species, and then how and why?
Yeah. So with bees, there's a lot of different reasons on why they can just collapse. Colony collapse is sort of a big thing, but we're in a world that isn't very friendly to the bees. So we're taught to kill the dandelions in our flower beds and that because it's ugly and the HOA doesn't want it. But that's really the bees' first nectar and pollen source of the year. So is the ugly weeds are really good for the bees.
Is that right?
It is, yeah. And so the more you get rid of that stuff, the worse it affects the bees. And honeybees are technically an invasive species to the United States. They're not native here. They were brought here in 1620, but so they've been here a long time. They're very effective pollinators, but there's way more. There's like 20,000 species of bees worldwide, and I think in the United States we have like 6,000 to 9,000 different species of bees. So it's there's bumblebees, carpenter bees, and so on and so forth. So there's quite the variety. But like for us last summer, we lost 90 hives. So that was my hypothesis on that is there was spraying happening in the bar ditches by the highway department for pre-emergent and Roundup and other things. And so every time we would pass them, we're out working bees. We'd go back a month later and we'd have tens of thousands of dead bees piled up inside hives. And so that's usually says that they were poisoned or got into some sort of poison. And herbicides will do the same thing because it's bad on the bee's gut. And then they bring that nectar back, put it in the hive, and then the other bees start eating on it.
Right.
So and then drought hurts the bees obviously also. So not having enough rain for the plants to flower and bloom, that can be a problem. And then there's another pest that gets into the bees called a varroa mite, which is probably one of the biggest challenges that we face as beekeepers is controlling the varroa mite, which is like to scale a tick is to us, where it's very small and you could sometimes have a hard time seeing it. On bees, it's the same way. And so the varroa mites breed, and then they breed inside the cells with the baby bees when they're waiting to emerge, and then the numbers get out of hand and it can be catastrophic to the hive.
Man, that's got to be a lot of loss to process. I mean, what's that feel like when you walk into a hive you've been maintaining and see that?
Yeah, if it's one or two, it's not like we lose hives. It happens. It's right. Just that last summer was the most I'd ever experienced as far as losses, and there was a lot of other beekeepers in the area that I know that had the same sort of challenges.
So any challenge brings about a lesson to learn to try and adapt how you can, and unfortunately the herbicide-pesticide problem is never going to go away. I hate to even have to say that, but it's also the reality of the situation. Have you learned some best practices to try and mitigate some of the loss that occurs from things that you literally have no control over otherwise?
Yeah, so we started feeding this probiotic into the beehives every month. So it's a powder that helps break down in their gut health. So it helps them break some of that stuff down. So we're experimenting with that right now to see.
Is it a spore probiotic, out of curiosity?
I don't know what all is in it. There's a bunch of different nutrients and vitamins. I don't know what at the base of it is, but it's a powder you sprinkle inside the hives, and then the bees eat it, and it helps them break down the exposure to pesticides and herbicides.
Wow.
So we're experimenting with that right now to play around with it. And then the other thing is not having our hives near big agriculture. So fields that are growing, one crop and spraying all kinds of fungicides and herbicides and pesticides is the more rural that we can have our bees, the better it is for the bees.
And speaking of getting hives out to people and teaching people more about this practice, part of this business is selling live bees equipment and helping to educate both brand new beekeepers and also those who have been doing it for a little bit. For somebody who is coming to you as a first-timer, what are some of the basics, maybe beekeeping 101, that you make sure to impart on them as they are starting on their own personal journey with bees?
The biggest thing is just helping get them to understand that the bee knows how to be a bee better than we know how to be a bee. So a lot of times people want to go and open up their hive every day and do that. So it's trying to set expectations for them on what we do to manage our bees and how we have success in doing that, where the new beekeeper gets really excited. They get their first hive or two and they want to go open it up every couple of days, when the reality is that sets the bees back 2 or 3 days every time you pull frames out because you're pulling apart that comb. So just trying to help set their expectations properly on what they should do for best practices starting out, and then knowing that it's not a baby that you need to coddle, the same way. So like during the freeze a few weeks ago, we had a lot of people reaching out to us asking us what we were doing in our bees, and so we did nothing. As long as they had enough food, they're fine. And so there's beekeepers wanting to wrap their hives with insulation, do all this stuff that just if the hive wasn't strong and healthy going into winter, the time to prepare for it wasn't a few weeks ago. It was a few months ago.
What's the proper timing for taking a peek? Is it like once a week maybe in the beginning?
We do it once a month is usually.
Once a month, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so in different times of year you do different things. So like when the nectar starts flowing and the bees are producing a bunch of nectar, then we're opening them up to manage space to make sure they don't run out of room to make honey, because then the hive will want to swarm and they get honey bound. So we're managing the space because we're adding boxes to give them more space to grow, where that's not a natural thing. In a tree, they're just going to fill it up and then half the hive will go make a hive somewhere else. And so the beekeeping, we're kind of managing that so they don't swarm, or doing a man-made swarm to prevent them from swarming on us, because you lose half your bees, then you lose that honey production as well.
So the more experienced beekeepers obviously don't need as much of that beekeeping 101 knowledge. So is there equipment that you are typically selling the more experienced beekeepers to help them with what they're doing? And is there a piece of information that you're able to impart that catches a lot by surprise that really helps with that whole process too?
A lot of people want to know how to split hives. After you're doing your bees for a year or two, you are more comfortable getting into them and all of that. So like splitting hives is something we're going to be doing classes on to show people what we do to split hives. And with beekeepers, it's really worse than politics. Everyone's opinion is the right way and the only way, and so everyone wants to argue about it. And so, but we have our way of doing it, and that's it. So, but experienced beekeepers are always wanting to learn also, just with what best practices everyone's doing. And so, because there's a lot of gimmicks to sell the beekeeper that doesn't really actually benefit the bees with products. And that's so like the products that we're selling is stuff that we use. We're not going to sell anything that we don't use and we don't believe in. I don't want to be the cheap tool option for beekeeping. I want to sell quality stuff that we use and that we can talk to, versus selling stuff that's junk
that has results.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. It's so interesting to me because, again, restaurant world is so tied to the ag world, right? And it's
especially local restaurants that are trying to buy as much local as possible.
Well, and I was going to say that too, right? It's like, how honey shows up in desserts or cheese and charcuterie boards and cocktails. It's every ingredient that a chef or a bartender chooses matters, and they've thought about it and they've put it together, and it could be only 3 ingredients. Those are the best drinks. Those are it's like those are the best dishes. That's why Italian food is so good, because if the pasta's made right, the tomatoes are right, the olive oil's right, you're good to go. And so a little bit of salt, a lot of salt. Anyways,
salt's a key.
But it's so interesting to me and pretty just awesome that here 30 minutes south of Austin, you've got a local beekeeper that has all sorts of products from that and can teach and help you if you're interested in that process. So it's a really neat business you found yourself in.
yeah, it's definitely different. I keep evolving and growing. So it's sometimes the problem is figuring out where to focus and where not to focus, because there's so many different angles and directions you can go.
Right.
As part of you selling honey in this store and maybe to people around the area, by the way, speaking of restaurants, have restaurants come to you asking about purchasing your honey to use in dishes that they serve up?
Yeah, we've spoken to several restaurants. They reach out, but they generally want the imported honey price on buying honey. They don't want the kind of craft beer of honey, with the local honey that's smaller batch produced.
We can work on changing that. Right.
Yeah.
Again, it's like we've got to get you to a level of wholesale functionality, right? So that the volume's actually worth your time.
Yep.
And then simultaneously, I saw this I remember when I was running Fino and Antonelli's cheese opened, right? It was the Antonelli's cheese plate on your menu. So it's the Lockhart Honey, flight on your menu, and it's like it's building that value. I mean, the value's already built. It's simply just taking that value and conveying it to the customer, to the guest, and saying, hey, the reason why this is X number of dollars is because of Kenny and his efforts and where it comes from.
the integrity, the respect that he operates on, the appreciation for history, and also an emphasis on real honey, which, ignorant for me, I don't know the difference between real honey and honey that I guess is just honey or maybe fake honey. What is the difference between real honey and regular honey?
So there's one of the biggest challenges with honey, like at the grocery store, is the labeling requirements and laws. So if the USDA would just say, hey, pollen needs to be in honey, that would be one way to help remove a lot of fraud from that, because a lot of pollen from countries where they want to hide where the honey came from, they filter out all the pollen. They force it through these very fine filters, and you can't tell the origin of the honey when you send it off to be tested. So that's a challenge. And then they use different syrups that are undetectable and different things like that to cover up the honey, because if you feed the bees sugar water or other things, they'll make honey out of that. And so then you mix it with real honey, and then you can get a lot more out of the bees by doing that. And so really every beekeeper will feed their bees at some point during the year, but it's never when there's a nectar flow happening. You know, the ones that are doing it honest and ethically, they won't do it when there's a nectar flow happening, because they don't want to make funny honey. And so that's kind of the idea there. And then honey that comes from overseas doesn't have the same laws that we do. There's different antibiotics that beekeepers use in other countries that are not legal in the United States. And then there was a deal on Netflix I watched a while back where they were talking about this antibiotic being in the honey that it has very negative side effects for humans when they consume it.
Oh, geez.
But it's illegal in the United States, and I think the honey came from Poland or something like that, but it was detected in a lab, and the company that was selling this and importing it was just kind of passing it off and acting like they didn't know anything about it. So there's a lot of fraud with honey, not knowing where it came from, and then when they heat the honey up. So what we have is raw, unfiltered honey. So we don't filter out the pollen, and we don't heat up the honey to kill all the enzymes that are in the honey, because honey is bee throw up. So bees have two stomachs, and so one stomach they consume nectar with, that they bring to the hive, and then one stomach that they consume food with. And so they fly back and throw the nectar up and then fly back out and get more. And so there's enzymes in a bee's gut that has health benefits to us. And so when you start heating that honey up, you kill those enzymes. And then when you go past like 150 degrees, you caramelize the sugars. So it goes from being a functional food to a sweetener that tastes like honey that has zero health benefits. And so when you caramelize the sugars, the honey won't crystallize, which is good for optics on the shelf, but crystallized honey isn't bad. Honey doesn't go bad. It's a food that stays good forever, but when it crystallizes, you just warm it up slightly to re-liquefy it is the easiest way to do it. And you just do it that way. But at the store, sitting on the shelves, it may not look as visually appealing to people, so they just will heat it up to kill all those beneficial properties in the honey.
Interesting. And we actually have a product on the table here for those watching on video. This is a jar of Lockhart Honey that is going to be sold at the Austin Rodeo this year. And it's not just a jar of honey, it's a jar of honey with a cowboy hat on top, which I feel like is just the tiniest little gimmick that is going to have you guys selling out each and every day you're out at the Austin Rodeo. How did y'all end up at the Austin Rodeo this year?
Yeah, so the Texas Department of Agriculture, through their Go Texan program, had sent out an email asking for people that wanted to attend the rodeo for their little pavilion they have set up. So we signed up for the week of spring break, and so we'll be out there for 4 days, Monday through Thursday, and selling honey and some candles and different products. So that's kind of what got it started. So we'll see how that goes. So we've just been making a bunch of candles and inventory of stuff to have ready, because we're starting to get busy in the bees right now as well.
I mean, as an Okie, it's hard for me to say this, but the Go Texan campaign is a great one.
Yeah.
You know, and it's done a lot and it's supported, you know, dinners using their products at restaurants, and you know, again, where you live is where you eat, right? And so it's important. I think it's an important choice for all of us to be making, you know, understanding where the food and products come from. And if they can come from Texas, that means that every dollar you spend on a Texan product stays in Texas. So it comes back to you a lot faster than you'd even probably realize. You know, I could come in here today and buy some Lockhart Honey, and those dollars are going to make it back to North Austin like pretty quick. And so, in terms of, I know, economics, talking about politics, right? Everybody's got an opinion. Those opinions are correct. But for me, in a microeconomic sense, it's like, man, the more dollars we can keep here, everything gets better when we're able to take care of each other and buy from each other and support each other locally. I'd much rather be buying honey from my neighbor than a pharmaceutical company in Poland.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you've described bees as 4 different things, and I want to ask you a little bit more about each. And I guess the first one's going to be fairly obvious. We discussed it a little bit earlier, but you described bees as essential. Why are bees essential?
The food we eat needs bees. So for pollination, so it's you think of watermelons, cantaloupes. There's a lot of foods that require pollination that the bees are essential for, and so honeybee honeybee hives are very effective pollinators because they have 60 to 80,000 bees in a hive. So that they send bees out every day, thousands, to go forage, and so the pollination part is huge. And so without pollinators, we're screwed. We don't have much time left without having pollinators.
You also describe bees as intelligent. As you said earlier, bees can literally go miles away from their respective hive in an area where maybe there's several or dozens of hives and get back to the hive that they started out in after a full day's work or whatever. How else do you consider, or do you see that bees are these intelligent creatures?
So a hive is really interesting to look at. You need to look at it as a single living organism. So it's the hive mind. So like when the bees feel threatened, they use a pheromone that smells like banana Laffy Taffy. So whenever we're doing bee removals in the air, their defense pheromone just smells like bananas in the air. And so that's when they're very.
It's time to get out.
Yeah, we don't have a choice. We've already opened Pandora's box, so we just vacuum the bees faster and try to work quicker. But it's that's something that's pretty cool with them, is that they all work together to accomplish a goal and a mission. And I think we as humans could learn a lot from that aspect. But with the bees, the last thing they want to do is sting you, also because they die when they sting you. So but bee venom is actually, there's a lot of health benefits to bee venom. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's always looked at as a negative thing. But if you're allergic, of course, it's one sting will kill you. But bee venom's the only known cure for Lyme disease. So
wow.
So that's something that
right.
Yeah, I had a lady a couple years ago that had reached out and said, I'm traveling from out of town. I need to buy about 200 bees. And I was like, wow, that's a weird request. And so I said, do you have something to put them in? And she said, yeah. So she came out and explained that she had Lyme disease. And after years of taking different pills and stuff, that she'd found this alternative treatment with bees. And there was a lady that got attacked by bees that was, I guess, in hospice care in California, and then was released from hospice care and still alive today. And this happened in like the mid to late 90s.
Wow.
And so they basically, that's how they learned. And so a lot of people with Lyme disease will microdose with bee venom. So like 2 to 3 times a day they sting themselves. And the idea is within 2 to 3 years the Lyme disease is gone and they don't have to sting themselves anymore.
You can microdose with anything now. Jonathan Lipnicki taught us many years ago in the movie Jerry Maguire that bees smell fear. Do bees smell fear?
I think they can sense when people are nervous and afraid of them, and so I believe that to be true.
You just spoke to another quality that you give to bees, and that's a sort of complexity. Is there another way that comes to mind that bees are complex?
There's all kinds of ways. The way they build their hives inside of walls, it's like a perfect symmetry of everything. It looks like artwork. When we cut open walls and do these bee removals, it's really fascinating to see how the bees operate, and so what they do when they have predators come in. So we did a bee removal earlier this week that had 3 dead rats inside the wall, and so the bees, my guess is they stung the rats because they felt threatened, and then they propolized or wrapped them. So they mummified these rats.
Like Killer Clowns. Wow. It's like the cotton candy and Killer Clowns. Oh my goodness. That was the creepiest movie of when I was young. Anyway, sorry.
But it's just, it's fascinating that they know what to do with that predator. So the threat was eliminated. Now they wrap it in wax and kind of leave it there. And now it becomes part of the structure of their hive. And so we found possums dead in floors of sheds, and all kinds of critters that were messing with the bees, and they took care of the problem and then just made it part of their home.
And this last adjective that you give bees is my favorite, because I am constantly having to remind my wife and kids, who are afraid of every little thing that flies around them, including
gnats,
including things that have no threat. Bees potentially threaten, but bees kill as a last resort, because that kills them too. Bees are our friends. We're working together with the bees. We have a deal with the bees. You call bees widely misunderstood. How are bees widely misunderstood?
So everyone's afraid when they're flying around their face or other things, and they could be doing that because of soap or laundry detergent, perfume. That could be something that attracts the bees to you. Depending on the time of year, when we're in a drought or a dearth is what it's called for the nectar. So a nectar dearth, you'll see a lot more bees at gas stations in the trash cans wanting to drink Slurpee cups and things like that. So, but when a bee's out foraging, that's no different than us going to the grocery store. Like when you're walking down the street and there's a crazy person yelling stuff across the street, you're like, oh, I'll avoid that person. But if someone smashes your window in the middle of the night, your response is totally different. And same thing with bees. When they're going to the grocery store and foraging, they have zero concern about defending anything. But if you start swatting at them, they could definitely become perturbed, just like that crazy person coming and swatting at you walking down the street. You're probably not going to respond nicely to that.
You're going to have a reaction.
Yeah.
So if you just ignore them and just walk away and that, it's usually not a problem. Sometimes they'll get caught in their hair and things, so that can be a challenge. But it's the more you get animated, the more they're going to feel threatened.
Keep calm, and eat more honey.
Yeah, pretty much. I actually had some crazy hobos screaming at us and taking swipes at people on the Chicago Blue Line going from O'Hare into the city last weekend.
Oh, yeah. Chicago, drink
a shot of Malort. So what is the role of technology in beekeeping? Because it does feel like a very analog thing. Are there technological advances, perhaps in equipment or otherwise, that have been very helpful to you in the 5 years that you've been learning about this?
There's quite a bit coming out all the time. One of the companies we're testing out hives with right now is a European company that has these insulated beehives, and so we're playing around with those right now to see what our thoughts are. And we're about a month into having bees in the hives, but that's something that's a different way, because like the wooden boxes right here, that's called a Langstroth hive, and that was invented in like the 1850s. So it's like kind of the tried and true and is very effective. But now there's different things with these insulated hives that the idea is the bees don't have to work as hard to cool or heat the hive. So inside the beehive, they maintain the temperature between 92 and 96 degrees year round. So no matter what time of year it is, the inside of that cavity is going to be 92 to 96 degrees. It may fluctuate up or down by a couple degrees, but it's they want to maintain that consistent temperature. And so with these insulated hives and other things happening is, one way to help the bees have to work less and produce more by not having to use as much energy to heat or cool the hive.
You also described earlier the probiotic that helps to defend bees against the herbicides and pesticides that can be absolutely detrimental to the individual bee, but also the hive too. In an article on you and this company that came out recently, you said that having to deal with the herbicide and pesticide problem has made you better as a business owner. I'm curious, how has that made you better as a business owner?
So having backup hives to be able to move out to these properties, because the landowner is relying on us to be compliant with their hive requirement. So when we lose hives, we have to replace those hives. So that's having extra hives on site or not too far away, and just staging hives so that we have plenty of extra hives to move around when issues arise, because you can't always split the hives because they may not be strong enough to make a new hive off of a split. And so just, that's one way of doing it, and just adapting to the problem, because that was, almost $30,000 worth of bees that was lost last year.
How's transport? Transporting hives, what does that even look like? How do you do you have to just drive really slow?
You do it at nighttime. So we load the bees up at nighttime or after dark, because they're all home. So if the bees are, if you do it in the middle of the day, you leave a bunch of bees homeless. And so, but we move them at nighttime, load them up, and then drive and unload them wherever they're going. So doing it after dark is kind of the best practice with that.
Is there a particular music that bees prefer? Are they like Willie Nelson fans, or are they Jerry Garcia fans? Like, what do they like to listen to?
It's a great question. I have not dove down that rabbit hole at this point.
Right, seems like you will eventually.
Let me know. I'll get working on a playlist right now. We'll see. I want some Grateful Dead honey. Is what I want.
Heavy on the goose.
Yeah, little goose honey. Yeah, I love all this. Funny honey. I love all the terms too.
Yeah.
Like there's so many kind of industry inside jargon. I'd love to see the honey the honey thesaurus and all the different things that you call them. So what a neat and kind of, like you said, it wasn't the plan, and here you are.
Yeah.
I mean, good for you, man. It's not easy to run a small business, period. Much less one that doesn't really have, there's not a honey company on every corner, right? So you're fighting the good fight for sure.
So your future involves continuing to do a lot of what you're doing right now in terms of educating and providing these various services for people. What is the future of bees and beekeeping, though, in the next, let's say, decade plus?
I think the it's constantly evolving. So a lot of the really big beekeepers that produce honey and that they have to do these pollination contracts because they can't survive otherwise. There's so many different things that could happen, but beekeeping in Texas is growing significantly because you can save money on your property taxes with bees. So that's one thing that happens. I think the more people become aware of what we're putting in our body, I'm noticing a trend with people that come in here that they want raw honey. So I think that the demand is going to just continue to pick up for getting a source of honey that's truly a raw, unadulterated honey, and I think that's becoming more important for the consumer, and so then with people getting into bees, save money on their taxes is going to continue to grow as well.
It's been long believed that eating local raw honey helps defend against allergies. I've heard some beekeepers actually disputing that and say, the evidence, it's nice to eat local honey. You should eat local honey. It doesn't necessarily protect you like that. Do you have any thoughts on that one way or the other?
I've read the same things where people say that it's not true, but I can say that for me personally, ever since I became a beekeeper and started consuming a lot of raw local honey, my allergies are significantly better than they ever were previously. So if it's a placebo effect, I'll take it.
That's right.
But it's I think the biggest thing is people try to just take honey when the allergies are bothering them and not do it as a consistent thing, because you want that pollen to continue to be in your system so that your body builds up immunity and tolerance to it.
This may be like asking how many jelly beans are in a jar, but how many times have you been stung?
Quite a few. So the most in one day.
Does it hurt less in 5 years?
You just kind of get used to it. It's just one of those things that if you don't want to get stung by bees, it's probably good to not be a beekeeper.
And the most in one day is how many?
Several hundred.
Oh my gosh.
So that was I didn't have any reaction that day, but the next day I felt hungover, like I just had a really long night out, and so I took the next day off and just kind of recovered from that. But I have stung myself in my sinuses for rhinitis when your allergies are going real bad. So there's a book that I have. I saw it in Chinese medicine, a guy getting stung in his sinuses, and it worked. Within 10 minutes, my nose quit running and it stopped it. So.
Wow.
I wouldn't suggest anyone do that without consulting
supervision.
A medical professional. But I did it. I don't have a reaction to bee sting, so I don't swell up. I don't have anything where a normal person might look like they went a round or two with Mike Tyson.
Any salves, any go-to, what's the best kind of thing to put on a bee sting if you say you got a little 4-year-old that didn't know?
You can use honey as a something to put on bee stings. There's all kinds of different ways of doing that, but I guess honey's probably your best option with raw honey.
See, I mean, multiple uses. Got to have it. Got to have it. Come by it, people. Come by it.
Definitely do. And we're now at the end of today's Austin Supper Club. Kenny, we end every Austin Supper Club with our weekly ATX restaurant, bar, coffee shop recommendations. So there's a place for you and your wife that y'all like to go to grab a meal, or some place you've tried recently that you want to give some love to.
Yeah, Fast Friends Brewery in Austin has been a place we've gone to a couple times now that has great beer and food, and so that's one place we've been visiting quite a bit.
Please remind us of your friend that brought the sourdough bread today.
Oh yeah, Samantha. So she's a local beekeeper also, and a friend of ours. So every Saturday she brings in sourdough, and so she brought in sourdough for us to try today. But her company is the Honey Hustle.
Honey Hustle.
Yeah.
Another cool term, Brian.
Yeah. Oh, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. My big last week food endeavor was at the school. I was co-chairing the fundraiser, and was fortunate enough to have 3 good friends and amazing chefs and bartenders show up and take care of that fundraiser. So Aaron Franklin made some po' boys. And,
man, how spoiled are those kids?
Sarah McIntyre. Oh, it was parents only. How spoiled are those parents?
Excuse me. How spoiled are the parents?
But it's a party for the teachers. We throw it every spring, and basically a big thank you to our educators there at the school and administrators. And so it was great. Sarah McIntosh made beignets from a pizzeria, and then Jessica Sanders from Drinkwell made Sazeracs and Pim's Cup and a non-alcoholic hurricane. I was saying to everybody, I was like, it may not have been the best party in Austin on Saturday, but it definitely was top 3. Like I'd put it up against anybody. So it was neat. It was fun. And obviously, just another very clear example of just how much talent is in this town and in this area. And we're supporting. So Uptown Sports Club, a pizzeria, Drinkwell. Those are 3. You could do them in the same evening, and probably have a pretty good experience.
Yeah, we were at Buddy Guy's Legends in Chicago on Saturday night watching Gary Clark Jr. tear it up in a very small club. They serve food at Buddy Guy's Legends, too. It's Cajun-inspired. I guarantee the food that you were eating was way better than the food that we were eating. The music was great. Buddy coming out and performing with Gary was awesome, but y'all's food was better.
We did have Big Wise Brass Band. We had DJ Kick It, and then we had the Silver Creek Jazz Orchestra play the after party. So the music was good. I don't know if it was Gary Clark good, but man, probably pretty close too.
The combination of those two things, well, Gary probably wins out. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah,
about
he's amazing.
Yeah. My recommendation this week, it's low hanging fruit. I know you're going to have to drink a shot of Malort because I'm mentioning Bufalina once again, but they've got a specialty pizza on the menu right now, the Muffaletta pizza. That is so freaking good.
I didn't know this. I'm going to have to go get this tonight.
Got some different cured meats on it. It's not a tomato sauce base. I want to say it's an oil base, good cheese, and they throw some arugula over the top. We are creatures of habit at Bufalina, but sometimes they offer up a specialty pizza that ends up becoming the go-to until it's no longer on the menu. So go get that now. It's definitely at the Douay location. I can't tell you for sure if it's at the Cesar Chavez location.
We all know it's only Douay. You don't go to Chavez. When you do, the Caesar salad's not as good.
I will go to Bufalina on Cesar Chavez at some point.
If the listeners have been paying attention, they know what they need to know about Bufalina.
I respect Steven for giving creative license to both of his locations, but it creates some differences.
No, it's great. And, good reminder again, it's where the choices every small business is making are important ones. And Kenny, your choices are amazing, and congratulations. And it'll be fun to see the more success ahead for sure.
Kenny Mays, founder, owner, operator of Lockhart Honey Company. LockhartHoneyCompany.com is the website.
Yep.
For all the different things we talked about today, contact him for those, or maybe if you just have a general question. This guy is a nerd for this stuff in a great way. And Kenny, it's been a real honor and pleasure coming out here and getting to know you a little bit better today and learning more about this business.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.
Boom. All right.
Good job, bud.
Good stuff, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That was great.
So fun to talk about.
Yeah, it is.
Really cool. I mean,